Welcome back, everyone, to another reaction video where we're going to go back to StarvHarv. You guys have been asking for me to take a look at his Breaking the Cold War with bad translations. If you're not familiar with what he does, he runs stuff from historic timelines on Wikipedia through a couple of Google Translate rounds and then kind of puts it back into English to see what happens. And the way languages work, words don't translate exactly, and so you get different weird meanings sometimes. And the occasional reference to he, who I know will be showing up in this one as well. I'll put links down in the description, not only to the original content if you want to check out his channel without my commentary, but also to some of the other reactions I've done to his stuff. I want to give a shout out to Brennan right here in Ohio and New Philadelphia. I'm going to be making my way down there before too long to do some historic content. And Connor in Katy, Texas. They're both executive producer level patrons. Thank you guys so much for your support. Let's check this one out.
I took Wikipedia's timeline of the Cold War and ran it through Google Translate 50 times using
50
languages
times.
with the worst translation quality. This was the result.
And before we even get into this, if you're ever curious, I don't remember the names of the channels. My daughter has shown me these. There's some channels who do this with songs, like Disney songs and different things like that, and then they sing them with the new translations. They're hilarious.
April to April 1945, US and UK fear Stalin's withdrawal and invasion of Poland. March to April 1945, British pound. Russian officials involved in Operation Vostok, President Roosevelt's second major, denied the allegations. Please
Stop moving. So there's an important thing to note here, and that's that this is while World War II is still going on, right? But the Cold War really begins before World War II ends. And you see that in the strategy that plays out and in the conversations that are happening. The Allies are already looking to what the post-war world's going to look like and how influence is going to be divided between the Soviets and Eastern Europe and the Western Allies, France, the UK, the United States, in the West. And we see that in terms of how everything gets broken up.
Please stop moving. And then April 12th, 1945,
FDR
President
dies.
Roosevelt dies. Vice President Harry St. Louis dies.
Harry Truman died too. Oh no. He was from Missouri, so at least calling him Harry St. Louis, I guess it kind of works. It's always fascinated me that in both the American Civil War and the Second World War, you have a brand new vice president that comes in who was not the previous vice president. In Abraham Lincoln's case, he had Hannibal Hamlin for his first term, but the second term, he's not really running as a Republican. He's running on this Union ticket, so he puts a Southern Democrat on the ticket with him, and Andrew Johnson, who had stayed loyal to the Union. And in FDR's case, he puts this relatively unknown senator, Harry Truman, on the ticket. The Democrats put him on the ticket. I don't know how much FDR really wanted him as his first choice. And then a couple months into FDR's fourth term, he becomes president.
You hate to see it. August 9th, Japan did not react when Truman authorized a second nuclear attack on Nagasaki.
They did
Live
not
Japan
react.
Reaction. September 2nd, Japan surrendered to General Douglas.
General Douglas, period. MacArthur led the liberation of Russia and its allies. So MacArthur's there. It's on the USS Missouri in the harbor there in Tokyo. Missouri's fantastic. You can visit it to this day. It's actually right within sight of the Arizona Memorial in Pearl Harbor.
MacArthur led the liberation of Russia and its allies. There's two people now. You on Team Douglas or Team MacArthur? On July 4th, Philip declared independence from the United States and entered the war against Hezbollah. What? February 25th, Bo Russia win.
I mean, good for Dortmund. They need to get some more wins. Borussia Dortmund is a team in the German Bundesliga.
Borussia. On June 5th, Secretary of State George Marshall announces a major economic plan for war in Western Europe. This is the world through the eyes of the Marshall Islands.
The Marshall Islands, which are all the way in the Pacific. Yeah, George Marshall. Sometime we'll have to do a video on him. Maybe Biographics has one. Such a fascinating character, and I got to talk about, well, I can't talk about that, never mind. So George Marshall in World War I is a staff officer. He's on the staff of General Pershing, and he basically, even though he's like a major and is later a colonel, he basically runs the American war effort on the Western Front. He's the one who plans the St. Mihiel offensive. He's the one who plans how to get all of the troops from St. Mihiel over and get them into position for the Meuse-Argonne offensive, and he kind of lays out that plan. And then, of course, during World War II, he's the American Army Chief of Staff, so he's the highest ranking member of the Army. He ranks higher than MacArthur. He's higher than Eisenhower. He's the guy. He'll be, I think, chairman of the Joint Chiefs and then become Secretary of State.
The islands have eyes. December 30th, Romania. King Michael defeated Agir Georgios died. This empire was overthrown and the Roman Republic was established. 1948,
Romanian Republic.
January the 30th, Mahatma Gandhi is beheaded. On June 24th...
He was shot. Definitely was not beheaded. Interesting.
Stalin visited France. Stalin closed all land routes from West Germany to Berlin. British and American troops arrive in Berlin. In response, the three Western powers flew fighter planes to Berlin and occupied it.
So the Berlin airlift is where Berlin is completely inside the Soviet part of Germany, the occupation zone, which becomes East Germany after the war. The three Western allies, Britain, France, and the U.S., their three zones become West Germany. But West Berlin is still part of the Western Allies zone. But being cut off, they've got to fly in supplies. And it's an amazing project where they basically have planes landing nonstop in order to supply West Germany.
On the 28th of June, Stalin blocked the streets of West Berlin and launched a hunger strike. It's just him on his own doing it. 1949. On August 29th, the Soviet Union tested its first atomic bomb. At a time when the Soviet Union was the second largest nuclear power in the world, the United States successfessly tested the Yo-Yam. Last October...
The Yo-Yam. So is that... Well, I think we're a little too early for a hydrogen bomb, so it's probably just talking about the Soviets.
President Tran Dai Quang announced the creation of a computer-based government for a quarter of the world's population.
All right, I'm a little disappointed that he has not made an appearance yet, but I fully expect he will be coming.
On June 25th, North Korea invaded South Korea, beginning the Korean War. The council put the house on a hill. Bloody council!
The Birmingham City Council. That's awesome. They put the house on a hill. That's a good place for it. Mott and Bailey Castle type.
On it. October 2nd, US forces crossed the 30th parallel and attacked South Korea. Are they on the North Korean side now? On October 22nd, China sent 30,000 troops to the People's Republic of China. And he's gone. Where is he?
There he is.
Oh,
no, he's gone. What? My great uncle was in the 3rd Infantry Division during the Korean War and described, first of all, the cold, the absolute bitter cold that they experienced on the front, but also these human wave attacks by the Chinese that were just terrifying.
November 9th, UN forces moved to the Yalu River. China sent 500,000 troops to attack North Korea and forced UN troops to attack South Korea. They've turned on their own side. On April...
The Korean War, and I'm not real intimately familiar with it, but basically you can think of it in kind of a couple of different major movements. It's first the North invades the South, and the South almost loses all its territory, but then the UN sends in forces, and they push back and push all the way into the North, and then with the Chinese troops coming in, they push back and kind of settle into that North-South divide, and it mostly remains a stalemate for the rest of the war after that.
April 11th, General Douglas shot and killed President Harry S. Truman. He's had enough. He's going to use the atomic weapons.
Wow. So MacArthur actually advocated for using nukes on the Chinese, which would have been a horrible escalation of that war. He eventually is fired by Harry Truman, which is a pretty big deal at the time if you think about it. And MacArthur kind of always had this ambition to run for president, but it never really materialized. I think his father had been a politician. His father had also been a Medal of Honor recipient during the Civil War.
Don't worry, though. On October 10th, President Truman signs the Mutual Security Act. So he didn't actually die. 1953. The Korean War ended on July 27th when President Eisenhower threatened the United States with the development of nuclear weapons. I'll do it. We've already got them. I like how they were like, all right, he's serious now, we better stop. September 7th, leader Nikita Khrushchev and rival Lavrentiy Beria are assassinated in December.
So, if you've ever seen the film Death of Stalin, which is this kind of dark humor, but it's hilarious. I absolutely love it. You've heard me talk about it before. Beria is one of the central, and so is Khrushchev. Khrushchev's played by Steve Buscemi, brilliant. Beria is kind of this J. Edgar Hoover type for the Soviets, but much darker and just a nasty, nasty guy who did some pretty terrible things. And when Khrushchev kind of takes power in the vacuum in the aftermath of Stalin's death, he brings down Beria, and Beria is given this kind of sham trial, and he is executed.
1954. April to June, McCarthy fans protest the army.
McCarthy
game should be televised in the US. Let me play McCarthy game, please. On May 17th,
if you're not familiar with McCarthy, he's kind of he's a Republican senator who leads kind of basically it was kind of a witch hunt for suspected communists in the American world of things, like especially in Hollywood and things like that.
Hezbollah takes control of the
Hezbollah
Philippines.
again in the Philippines.
On August 11th, the CCP set fire to Taiwan. The accident happened on the coast of Taiwan Island. The accident. Oopsies! May 5th, Army invades West Germany. It doesn't say which one, though. On 1956, Khrushchev delivers a speech at the 20th Congress of the Communist Party of China. He says, "Towards the people and the people's influence," which focused on the beginning of Stalinism. US and UK cut funding.
So Khrushchev leads de-Stalinization, right? Stalin, I think most people in the Soviet Union would have preferred, in a perfect world, to have not had Stalin, because look at the millions who died of his own people because of Stalin's policies. But until he was dead, no one felt they were in a strong enough position to do anything about it. But once he's gone, now they're going to kind of do de-Stalinization, where we did not agree with that, we're not a part of that, and we're going to roll back from the policies that Stalin had.
Egypt's Swan High Dam construction.
Aswan Dam.
Because the rebels bought weapons. NASA developed the Suez Canal. The 29th of October, crisis in Sweden. France, Israel, and Britain fly to Egypt to attack NASA.
How did NASA end up in? It's a crisis with the Suez Canal.
Canada opens the door to Ambassador Lester B. Pearson. UN Peace Prize Prime Minister of Canada. Awarded the Nobel Peace Prize to Lester B. Pearson. I think he wants us to know that he has a Nobel Peace Prize.
I think the Toronto airport's named after Pearson, isn't it?
November 6th. Dwight Eisenhower loses the presidential election to Adele Stevenson. December, North Vietnamese rebellion begins in North Vietnam.
There's so many things with that one. Eisenhower won the election against Adlai Stevenson.
With Vietnamese aid. 15.5, British darts. 1958, Languinary, Memoirs of Pope Mao. August,
Pope Mao.
A Raytheon intercontinental ballistic missile is launched from Moscow towards Britain. On August 23, China began dropping atomic bombs. This was the beginning of the Second Taiwan War. The Cold War has just become hot very quickly. September 1st, Iceland starts water supply. That killed the mood very quickly. The British protested and sent ships to the area. Iceland just got water for the first time, and the British were like, October 11.
That's such a British thing, though, right? Oh, you have a resource. We would like to acquire it. Thank you.
The author has moved. It's November, Berlin Crisis 1958, 1959, Euro 1959. December 6th, continue running 3 ads. Is this when YouTube was established? 1959. January 2nd is the first month. However, he flew 5,990 kilometers without using an aeroplane.
That is the most he thing ever. It's nice to see he has made his return.
He is just so powerful. March 3rd, Moon Artist 4. This image was taken as it travelled 60,000 kilometres from the moon to the moon, which is 32,000 kilometres away.
Moon's 250,000 miles away, so I don't know, that's 300 and some thousand kilometers.
September, Khrushchev visits the United States for 13 days, but is not allowed to visit Disneyland.
Oh, no. Hey, kind of a cool fact. Khrushchev's, at least one of his sons, became an American citizen. I actually met him, 20 years or so ago. He spoke at a local high school here. So Khrushchev's got American descendants.
The sea time! December, Viet Cong NEC is established in North Vietnam. It is a communist revolution that overthrew the communist regime in North Korea. It is found in northern Vietnam and USSR. I like how they had a communist revolution to overthrow a communist government. 1960, April. Jupiter will test an intercontinental ballistic missile, like Britain's Raytheon, at Morotto in Moscow, Italy. June.
The Americans have Jupiter missiles, so I'm wondering if that has something to do with that.
Conflict between China and the Soviet Union. Chinese leaders were not satisfied with the Soviet treatment of slaves. The computer was invented and the war with the USSR began. The third Cold War has begun.
Oh, man.
I started having a similar problem on July 5th. August 11th, Chad retires from golf.
Not Chad, no.
Oh. On September 23rd, Khrushchev addressed the United Nations General Assembly in New York. I went to America for a month. May 5th, Alan Shepard becomes the first American to travel to space, successfully campaigning for freedom.
Yes.
May 19th, Jupiter retains Jupiter's shipland. It will be the first spacecraft to fly from Jupiter to Earth. I think Jupiter is like the entire planet is like united and also involved in the Cold War somehow. October 17th, unification of the Ukrainian SSR and the Ukrainian SSR. The Cuban Missile Crisis. October 16th, USSR builds nuclear power plant in Cuba. USSR agrees to non-binding agreement. Kennedy confirmed to Cuba about nuclear missiles and promised to destroy US missiles.
What is happening? So, first the US had tried to overthrow Fidel Castro, who comes to power and sets up communism in Cuba. The Bay of Pigs is a complete disaster. Basically, it was this kind of CIA operation. The idea was to kind of get a revolution started and help the Cuban people overthrow Castro. Well, a complete disaster. And then a year later, you have the Soviets putting short and medium range nuclear ballistic missiles in Cuba, which could basically destroy the entire U.S. East Coast and a decent part of the South with weapons that would hit so fast there would be no warning. And so Kennedy, there's this diplomacy that goes on, and sometime we're going to cover this because it's a fascinating story. And eventually what ends up happening is the Soviets pull the missiles out. The U.S. a few months later pulls its missiles out of Turkey, which it was going to do anyway.
And Castro betrayed Turkey and Italy. What? Why? December 7th, rebellion against British rule in Brunei. This match will be the first match between Indonesia and Malaysia. On August 5th, Great Britain and the Soviet Union signed the Pacific Treaty. It's not an underground nuclear bomb. It's not. Trust me on this. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
So a lot of tests were either underwater or underground for nuclear weapons.
November 22nd, John F. Kennedy is injured and dies in Dallas.
It was November 22nd, 1963, not 62.
Some believe the communist government or the CIA is responsible, but they still need treatment. Kennedy was inaugurated as the President of the United States by Vice President Lyndon Johnson on January 27th.
Interestingly, only president sworn in by a woman. Lyndon Johnson on board Air Force One at Dallas Love Field. Where he's sworn in. A famous photograph of him taking the oath of office with Mrs. Kennedy standing next to him, blood all over her outfit. To this day, it sickens me. I don't know if it was her idea or if she was talked into it. It's just horrifying to me that she had to stand there and watch that happen just hours after her husband died.
1964. France recognized the People's Republic of China. On February 10th, the People's Republic of China severs diplomatic relationships with France. It didn't last long. On September the 24th, Mozambique and Lithuania begin the Mozambique
Look out.
War of Independence.
Lithuania's coming.
Portugal's not involved in this. Taking it out on Lithuania instead.
I mean, similar colors going on in the flags. I get it. Natural allies.
November 28th, Sailor Moon 4 is released. 1965, March 23rd. See the top 9 matches. The Belarusian government declared independence on November 11th, and Harold Wilson recognized independence as British Prime Minister. No one recognized Rhodesia, but Portuguese neighbours, including Mozambique and South Africa, vowed to overthrow the African empire. 1967.
I bet he could help with that.
On March 12th, Emperor Suhat Suharto died and declared himself president of Indonesia. East African countries, such as the Soviet Union, the People's Republic of China, and North Korea.
Yes, well-known East African nations.
Indonesian treaty was signed by Suharto and the United States. The new football season brings the capital and foreign countries into Indonesia. China dropped its first nuclear bomb on June 17th, 2017. I must have missed that. July 1st, war begins. Don't know which one, just war. Any of them. Pick one. The 21st to the 27th of December. 8th moon Apollo enters lunar orbit for the first time.
Apollo 8.
Made 10 orbits before returning to Earth, but never
He was on Apollo 8. Who knew? Interesting.
landed on the moon. He has become, supernaturally powerful now. He was powerful before, but he wasn't orbiting the Earth powerful. He arrived in the United States from New Armstrong Airport on July 20th.
So Neil Armstrong becomes the first man to walk on the moon on July 20th, 1969.
25th, the Vietnam War begins. American troops
Been going
left
for a while
Vietnam,
at that point.
and war began in South Vietnam. September 1st, Colonel Muammar Gaddafi overthrows the Libyan government. Libya, an ally of Britain and the Soviet Union, was killed. Rest in peace. A moment of silence for Libya, please. The entire country was killed. 1970. August 17th includes Wolves 7. December 15th to the 7th is Thursday. He becomes the first astronaut to land on another planet.
Nice.
1971. Idi Amin's victory in Uganda on January 25th was a joke. My favourite one is just March 28th. Say no more.
Just
September,
the date.
Prime Minister Edward Heath expels 105 Soviet officials from Britain. His leg was cut off with a sword. December 2nd,
What does that even mean?
Mars 3 approaches Earth and makes measures. He landed on Mars for the first time. However, it is spread for less than 20 seconds. September
I don't even know what that's supposed to mean.
28th, 2019, Canada's biggest event, the Soviet Hockey Series.
That sounds like a big event in Canada would be something like hockey.
September 11th, 1973, Chilean Revolution. King Augustus Pinochet killed King Augustus.
Good for him.
On June 28th, the beginning of Moscow. On April 18th, Khmer Rouge invaded Cambodia, led by Paul Home. Who? May 12th, Mayaguez incident. The US Navy intervenes between the Khmer Rouge and the United States, rescuing the ship and its crew.
Khmer Rouge, led by this guy named Pol Pot, one of the deadliest regimes that existed in the 20th century, responsible for millions of deaths.
He leads the team to failure. He's losing it a bit. My favorite month, Julia. The Apollo program has already started. This was the first flight of the joint Soviet-American space program. A successful mission is seen as a sign of space flight.
It's a pretty big deal when you have this joint mission where the Americans and the Soviets link up in space. In the midst of the Cold War and all of this stuff that's going on, and the Cold War still got another 15 years or so ahead of it. These two rivals at least doing something, especially in the space race, which has been so contentious over time. It was a pretty cool moment.
November, condoms are sent to South America. The terrorist attack against him took place on
No!
November 29th. On June 29th, Syria will withdraw from the United Nations and join the United Nations. July 20th,
Reset.
return to the United States. Leave Thailand. September 9th, Mr. Mao Shandong. Mr. Mao Shandong, everybody.
Mao Shandong.
1978, Independence Day in England. Chinese President Xi Jinping said on December 18th that China will continue to promote innovation and open up to the outside world. On December 25th,
What's with the random John Cena appearance there?
innovation and open up to the outside world. On December 25th, a communist government was established in Afghanistan. Visit Vietnam and Cambodia, please.
It's a pretty disastrous war in Afghanistan for the Soviets. It becomes one of those proxy battlegrounds like Vietnam and Korea had been. And now you're seeing this happen in Afghanistan as well. The U.S. is going to, and the Western allies are going to funnel weapons and support and logistics and things like that to the Mujahideen in Afghanistan, who are then going to turn around and use those same weapons and systems and things like that later on against the Americans.
May 4th, Ellie Margaret is elected Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. John Paul
Margaret Thatcher.
II visits Poland for the first time. He was born
I was going to say, that's pretty impressive. His name is Karol Wojtyła. He was from Poland.
in Poland. But this is the first time he's ever visited that. On December 12th, NATO threatened to develop nuclear weapons in Western Europe. He has played this game twice. Is he like a fourth wall break? He's actually controlling everything. And this is his second playthrough. It would explain a lot.
It's his second playthrough.
May the 17th, Marx Lenin government and Peruvian army. Very good. On July 3rd, the CIA launched a counter-Soviet operation against African Union forces in Afghanistan. August 31st, after Lenin attacks Gdansk port, Poland signs the Treaty of Gdansk.
Pretty impressive for Lenin, who's been dead since the early 1920s.
1981, January 20th,
Ronald
Reagan is elected 40th President of the United States. She was elected thanks to President Reagan's anti-Semitic policy.
So, he actually sworn in as president in 1981, January. He would have been elected in November of 80.
On December 13th, UN Secretary General Wojciech Chasky called for the abolition of the right to life in order to settle political differences between the Chinese Communist Party and...
Seems excessive.
I'm calling for the abolition of the right to live. 1982, on the 24th, President Ronald Reagan announced the Caribbean Initiative to prevent the collapse of communism in local government.
Prevent the collapse of
Ronald
communism.
Reagan is very different.
Can I just take a moment and appreciate something here?
Prevent the collapse of communism in...
So we got Alexander Hamilton, who's on the $10 bill, and that's showing up. And Hamilton was born in one of these islands, right? So he was born on Nevis. So it's pretty cool to see them choose to show Hamilton there.
In local government. This universe is Ronald Reagan. It's very different. April 2nd, the United States invades the Falkland Islands. This was the beginning of the Falklands War. Brand new He law just dropped. The 30th of May. He is from Spain. Born in Spain. Oh, it's a more He law. The Communist Party of Sri Lanka was banned on the 30th of July. He can be called the youngest son of the Soviet Revolution. This is giving some background to He now. I like it. In October, American forces invaded the Caribbean island of Grenada. He overthrew the communist government, overthrew the Cuban army, and stopped the Soviets from building an airport.
So the U.S. was militarily involved in Grenada at this time, and then of course you have the whole Iran-Contra thing going on. So U.S. pretty heavily involved in Central America in general in the 1980s and dealing with communism, and that's all part of the Cold War.
May the 24th, Congress adopts the Borland Convention. He condemned aid to the rebels. August 11th, Soviet Union President Ronald Reagan mocks Mike during testimony
Not
week.
Mike. Mike is like one of the best characters in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul.
President Reagan says, "I am America."
That's awesome.
I'm delighted
I am the Senate. That's what they're showing there.
Sign Russia with. Each 5 minutes is burning. What?
That's awesome.
1985, February 6th. The Reagan Doctrine calls on the United States to support communist revolutions in third world countries. On April 22nd, the National Assembly elected members of the National Reform Commission. He was convicted of crimes against humanity and war crimes in Argentina from 1976 to 1983.
But he's so he'll get out of it. It's okay.
God created human beings with life. November 21st, Ronald Reagan and Gorbachev meet twice, parentheses 3 times, for a conference in Geneva, Switzerland. There's a new character just dropped. 1986. She was elected the first female prime minister of the Philippines.
I'm guessing they're referring to Imelda Marcos.
1989, January the 20th.
She had a lot of
George
shoes.
W. Bush was elected as the 41st president of the
Before
United
his
States.
dad?
Not H.W. Bush, but George W. Bush. February the 2nd, Soviet forces withdraw from Afghanistan. And then on March 15th, civil war broke out in Afghanistan, and Soviet troops were expelled from the country. You just keep getting kicked out. Tiananmen Square massacre on June 4th left dozens dead after the Chinese government cracked down on protests in Beijing. Not thousands, just dozens.
And that was a big deal. That's one of those events I really remember. And of course, there's that iconic image of a young man standing in front of a tank in Tiananmen Square.
On November the 17th to the 28th, the Grape Revolution ends in Czechoslovakia. The day after the Malta summit, Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev and American President George W. Bush announced they had signed a permanent peace treaty. Many observers saw the meeting as the official start of the Cold War.
No!
Those ones were a bit stupid, though, so ignore them. 1990, 29th of May, Boris was elected
Boris
president.
Yeltsin.
Yeltsin, Russia.
Yeltsin, Russia. Boris Yeltsin, president of Russia, but Russia's still part of the Soviet Union at this point.
1991, Albany's ruling Labour Party dissolved on June 12th. August the 22nd, add and add not. That is the question. Turkey declared independence on October 26th. The majority voted for the independence from the Soviet Union. Turkey was part of the Soviet Union the whole time. We didn't know.
Turkey is part of NATO.
No. December 22nd, beginning of the French War. President Bush received a phone call from President Yeltsin and gave a birthday speech on December 25th. You know the Cold War. I hope you do, because you should watch a video about it.
So what ends up happening is that the Soviet Union dissolves. There's a coup in Russia. And Boris Yeltsin's a big part of all that.
And then December 26th,
It's Ukraine.
the Ukrainian
Yeah.
parliament dissolved the Soviet Union, and America became the only country in the world.
Probably superpower is what was originally said there. That was fun. I hope you guys enjoyed that. It's something a little lighthearted, a little different. Gives us a chance to laugh, but also talk about a little real history in the process. I'll put some links down in the description to some of the other StarvHarv stuff I've done. You'll also see it on the end screen here in a minute. Thanks to Evan in Layton, Utah, and Dustin in the Springs, Colorado Springs. Thank you so much for your support on Patreon. We'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching.